She locked eyes with me and declared, "Leave me. Just walk away. I'm not your problem." I nearly bought it. Almost. But just as her sentence concluded, the corner of her mouth twitched. Just a hint. Just enough. In that fleeting moment before she regained control, I glimpsed it. The smile she had not meant to reveal. That smile turned everything around. But let's rewind a bit. This story didn't begin with her, but with a crisp Thursday morning, a reluctant engine, and a sky set to take a dark turn. Before we proceed, have you ever met someone whose words clashed with the truths in their eyes? Hit the subscribe button. Share your thoughts in the comments. Stick around until the end. Let's begin. I am Rhett Calloway. I conduct wilderness survival training for corporate teams. Organizations fly their executives to the Cascades, strip them of Wi-Fi, assistants, and carefully curated personas. I unveil who they truly are when the mountain shows no regard for their titles. I excel at reading people. It's not boasting, it's my profession. You must discern who will endure and who will falter before pressure strikes. Otherwise, it's too late. What I struggle with is this: being still, allowing things to linger unfinished. Watching people leave when my instincts holler that something is awry. My ex-wife labeled it a pathology. She wasn't completely off. That Thursday, I ventured to Harlow Ridge to assess trail conditions ahead of a corporate group arriving Friday morning. The parking lot was nearly deserted. One vehicle, silver, rental plates, parked oddly, revealing that the occupant wasn't anticipating a long stay. I placed my hand on the hood. Cold. Not just an hour cold. Not 2 hours cold. This car had sat idle since before dawn. I glanced up at the ridge. The western sky had already begun to darken. That deep, unsettling purple recognized by seasoned hikers. A fire was lurking beyond the tree line. I detected it before visual confirmation. That sharp, bothersome stench of things aflame that should never have caught fire. I reported it in. Dispatch confirmed. The Harlow fire had breached the containment line at Sector 6, advancing northeast. Wind speeds were climbing to 18 miles per hour. They were evacuating everyone south. Everyone. I glanced back at that cold car one last time. Then I took off running. The trail up to the old Ranger kiosk is steep, winding through ponderosa pines that have weathered a century and remain unimpressed. Ash fell around me by the first bend. Gray, delicate, almost gentle, a warning from the mountain before it lost its civility. I pushed forward. My lungs screamed for relief. My radio crackled with chatter I had no time to entertain. Then I rounded the last curve and halted. She sat on the kiosk steps, claiming them as her own. Clipboard on her lap. Legs crossed at the ankles. Blonde hair cascading around her shoulders, illuminated by the smoky light, making the setting seem serene if you ignored the orange glow consuming the western horizon. She looked up as my boots crunched on gravel. Fear was absent in her gaze. Annoyance took its place. "You're late," she informed me. I came to an abrupt stop. "Pardon me? I've sat here for 20 minutes. I called it in. Dispatch mentioned someone would come." She tilted her head. "You're slower than I anticipated." I gazed at her. Behind her, the sky burned with the hue of coal. Ash fell more heavily by the moment, and she was critiquing my response time. "Can you walk?" I asked. "Technically." She glanced at her left ankle. It was swollen, pushing against her bootlaces, the skin tightly stretched. "Functionally?" "No. What's your name?" "Sloan." "Sloan." I crouched to examine her ankle without asking. She permitted me, indicating the pain surpassed the facade she presented. "I'm Rhett. We have 30 minutes before the smoke reduces visibility to 0. I'll carry you out." She regarded me as though I'd suggested something mildly offensive. "You don't need to do that," she replied. "I understand. I'm serious. I've calculated the numbers. If you carry me, you lose 40% of your speed on this incline. That's the difference between reaching the trailhead and not. I held her gaze. She returned it. Leave me, she insisted, her tone calm yet firm. Walk away. I'm not your problem. Then came that pivotal moment. Just before she finished that final word, something slipped. The poised demeanor, the clipboard, the math, everything shifted in that brief heartbeat. The corner of her mouth shifted upward. Not quite a smile, not quite hope. Somewhere in that gray area she had no intention of revealing to me, but I caught it. I noticed it and grasped an immediate truth. This woman had been conditioned to believe that needing aid equated to weakness. She had embraced this belief, shaping her entire identity around it. Right now, seated on these steps with a twisted ankle and a wildfire behind her, every fiber of her being craved someone to challenge that notion. But she would never ask. Your math is flawed, I stated. Her eyes widened. Excuse me? You factored in my speed while carrying your weight. You didn't consider the toll it takes on me to abandon someone. I held her gaze firm. I can't run well with a guilty conscience. A flicker crossed her expression. She had no retort for that. I slid one arm beneath her knees and the other behind her back. Wrap your arms around my neck. I haven't agreed to this. I know. I lifted her. Feel free to file a complaint at the trailhead. She emitted a sound that was neither protest nor laughter. Her arms encircled my neck, fingers clutching my collar, and I began to move. Carrying someone up a steep trail while a wildfire encroaches isn't romantic. It's harsh, systematic, and taxing in every conceivable manner. My shoulders screamed. My thighs protested. The ash had transformed the trail into a slippery gray mass, and each step was a fraught gamble. Sloane maintained her position against me, purposefully still. A kind of stillness requiring restraint. She adjusted her weight to ease my load. She said nothing, just did it. I noticed. I said nothing, too. You do this professionally, she remarked about a quarter-mile in. Not a question. Survival training for corporate teams. I've sent 3 senior directors to programs like yours. I glanced down at her. What's your profession? I lead a development firm focused on urban infrastructure. We were evaluating a watershed project on this ridge. She gazed at the smoke-heavy sky. Or at least we were. A branch snapped somewhere behind us. Close. Too close. I didn't halt my pace. Are you afraid? She asked. Yes. Silence enveloped us for a moment. You didn't hesitate to admit that. Pretending I'm unafraid atop a flaming mountain doesn't extinguish the fire. Most men I know would never concede that. Most men you know haven't stood on a burning mountain. She made that sound again, the one that danced as a near laugh. It continually caught me off guard. It was evident she kept it in check, but occasionally it slipped free. We were roughly 2/3 of the way up when I heard the sound that felt out of place. Footsteps in the trees to our left, moving hastily and unevenly. I instinctively slowed, shifting Sloane's weight to shield her behind me. A man emerged from the trees. Late 40s, his pack ajar, eyes wide. He came to a halt upon seeing us. His gaze locked onto Sloane, then shifted to my pack. I sensed something unsettling in his expression. She hurt? He inquired. We're in motion, I answered. Trailhead is south. Stick to the main trail. He remained stationary, his eyes returning to my pack. I angled slightly. No words were needed. He understood. He looked away first. Main trail, he echoed, and proceeded. I resumed my pace. Sloane's fingers tightened on my collar. He was lurking in the trees for a while before that, she murmured. I froze for a heartbeat. How long? 5 minutes, perhaps. I remained quiet. You were focused on the trail and smoke. I didn't want to introduce more variables. I processed her words. She had been vigilant of a potential threat, alone, in shock, on a burning mountain, and chose to safeguard my focus over her own fear. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me. Just keep moving. I pressed on. We reached the ridge with 8 minutes to spare. I can confirm because that's when the smoke shifted from gray to brown, the hue it takes when the fire is close enough to siphon oxygen from the air. I set Sloane down on a flat boulder at the peak, where the trail expanded, and the air felt thin, clear, and surprisingly still compared to the chaos below. She gazed back at the mountain. Then she turned to me. Yes. Why? I looked at her, the ash in her hair, her pale visage. Her eyes sparkled, unguarded, in a manner they hadn't since I discovered her on those steps. This moment was the first time I saw her without her defenses. I told you, I replied. I can't run well with a guilty conscience. That's the pragmatic explanation. I'm aware. She lingered, the mountain simmering silently below us. My brother perished on a mountain, I disclosed. It came out steadier than anticipated. 3 years ago, it was a hiking accident. He was alone. No one arrived in time. I paused. I ascended that ridge because I know the weight of no one coming. The silence shifted, evolving into something more profound, heavier, more careful, and somehow warmer. I'm sorry, she said, not reflexively. It carried weight and authenticity. Don't apologize, I replied. Just don't tell anyone to leave you on a burning mountain. And there it was once more. The smile was radiant this time. Slow, unguarded, and genuine. It transformed her face into something naturally beautiful amid chaos. I'll add that to my list, she quipped. My radio buzzed. Dispatch. I pressed the button. Coming out now. 1 casualty, ankle injury, non-critical. Ensure a medic is at the south lot. I reached for her. She wrapped her arms around my neck before I could utter a word. I carried her the remaining distance down. At the trailhead, they loaded her into an ambulance. She kept her eyes glued on me as the paramedic spoke. I lingered by the truck, glancing back. Right before the doors sealed, she called, Rhett! I approached. She retrieved a business card from her coat pocket and handed it to me. Sloane Vieira, CEO. Vieira Urban Development. My firm is funding 3 wilderness programs in the Cascades next quarter, she stated. I'll need a site consultant familiar with these mountains. I examined the card, then looked at her. That's a remarkably professional rationale for giving a man your number, I remarked. The corner of her mouth twitched. It's the only reason I have. The ambulance doors shut. I stood in the dim May light, clutching her card as the mountain burned behind me. I recalled the smile she hadn't intended to show, the one on the steps, the fleeting glimpse before she closed it off. It told me everything her words tried so hard to conceal. Some individuals enter your life unexpectedly. A detour, unplanned, inconvenient, impossible to overlook. Sloane Vieira arrived like a wildfire, and I sensed that by the end, absolutely nothing was going to appear the same. If this story resonated with you at the right moment, perhaps reminding you that the right person doesn't always come softly, please like this video and subscribe to Danito Stories. New tales drop weekly. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.